we'll move on to another very important session. Uh, we have this advocacy, philosophy, and action. So for this, we have an, I would say, advocacy icon in the sector. We have our president, Dr. Anil Aneja, sir, who's also the Secretary General, who's also the member of World Blind Union. He's also the professor in Delhi University. Anil Aneja sir is also the nodal officer of Delhi University Equal Opportunity Cell. He has been the recipient of various awards. He has been awarded the best role model by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment and NAB Sarojini Naik Award. So various awards. And my personal experience, because I've been working with Aneja sir for for about more than 10 years, I think.
10 years,
yeah. 10 years in the advocacy. Only one thing I would share, I did law, but I could not contribute anything in the sector. So that was my, I felt very much bad about that. But after joining in AICB, when I started doing advocacy work, so now that that feeling was not there, because I could contribute, I could work in the advocacy also. So Aneja sir is a person who teaches lot of work in advocacy, and which he appears directly in the court. And whenever we have a case in CCPD, Aneja sir only appears before the chief commissioner, and he makes sure he wins the case. I think there is no case which is no case lost by Aneja sir in my experience. So we are very privileged to listen to you, sir, on this topic, because nowadays, given the unemployment situation, given the lockdown, the advocacy strategy, according to us, is very important. So over to you, sir.
So good afternoon, friends. Thank you, Muthu, for that very generous and warm introduction. I want to continue with the area of organizational growth and development, strategies for organizational growth and development. In that process, I want to talk about the role, importance, philosophy, and action of advocacy. Just give me a second. Talk about the significance of the philosophy and action relating to advocacy, and talk about our own experiences like Madhu. I'd also be practical and I talk about some real examples what advocacy means. Of course, AICB, as you know, has been doing a lot of advocacy in southern part of India. In Tamil Nadu, we have done a number of cases. Even now, we have one important case going on in the Madras High Court relating to reservation in aided colleges and the schools also now, due to which CSJB had a protest also, because the lawyer was not pursuing the case very properly. So there were delays. I thank CSJB and proud of you for taking action in this regard. But the case still continues. And that's one case, but there are a number of important cases we have done in Tamil Nadu and as in various parts of the country. But before I come to these, I want to focus on the genesis of an organization. You may recall that in the earlier submissions that I made during the inaugural session, I was stressing on the need to become strategy-based from activity-based. And I want to now, and I'm going back because it's in that context again that I want to talk about advocacy as a strategy and not as an activity of your organization. And I want to argue further that the strategy of advocacy is actually embedded in the very philosophy of the self-help movement of the blind. So what is the difference between activity and strategy? The difference between activity and strategy is this. Today, we are having this training workshop for our affiliates in South India. That's one activity. We have done the workshop. On the same day, same time, as I told you in the morning, we are having another workshop at AICB, which is on personality development. That's also a 2-day event. That's another activity. But what is the strategy? Why are we having so many things? The strategy is to empower and train visually impaired persons. The strategy is training in both cases, in the case of both the activities. The underlying part is training. And it's in the context of that training that both these activities become important. So training is a strategy. Training and empowerment of the visually impaired in various skills is a strategy. Activity is these two workshops that we are having. Unfortunately, many organizations become activity-based. We will do this, we will do that, we will do A, B. This day is coming, so we will do this activity. That day is coming, we will do that activity. We will get people. And they think you're doing a lot of work. That is not real work. That's important. But then real work is when these activities become a part of a strategy which comes out of, as Madhu mentioned earlier, a sense of vision. What is a larger vision? It is that larger vision that actually makes you form an organization. Why does a person form an organization after? It's not something that gives us money. It's not something that benefits us. It's not that, that the career is assured. We should form an organization. These things don't happen. We have stories and stories where people have formed organization not knowing where it's going to go. You heard one such story today from Madhu. AICB story is no different. We should read Mr. Ford's autobiography, Nitya, which is translated in English as Reminiscences by my wife, who is now passed away. He had done that translation for Mr. Ford. Reminiscences, this is there on the internet, Muthu. I think the book is there, Reminiscences, on our website.
Yes, sir. It is.
Yeah, so you can access that from there. You should read that autobiography and many other things. You'll get to know that story after story of leaders where they didn't know where they're going when they formed the organization. So no success is guaranteed. You can never say that things will be fine, or you can never say that you'll succeed, you become. That way, they worked hard. It's not come easy. Nobody's gifted that status or that position to any leader. Be assured of that. Nobody is gifted. And it's good that you want to attain that, and you should want to attain. And for that, very good thing will happen, you'd work. So one forms an organization, the point I'm trying to argue. One forms an organization because one has a vision. One has an idea. Either you see a discrimination and you want to fight against that, and you think in fighting as an individual may not work, so you want to fight as a group, or you want to see a need for a service and you want to provide that service, and you think as an individual you may not be able to do, so you form a group to provide that service. All these things happen, but ultimately, whatever may be the cause, the reason why you form an organization is because of certain vision that you have. And that vision has a larger goal. The goal is the equality and rights of the visually impaired, the equality and empowerment, equality and skill development of the visually impaired. That, I assume, is the goal of all organizations of the blind. They want to ensure non-discrimination, they want to ensure equality, and they want to ensure inclusion of the visually impaired in various. That's why we formed, because we feel there's some gap. If there was no gap and if everything was fine and everything was like hunky-dory, there would be no need for an organization. We'd sleep in our homes on Sunday. But we don't do that. Whatever free time we get, we work for the organization, we develop, because we want to achieve these ends of inclusion, equality, and non-discrimination. And if these are our aims in forming an organization, I would say these are also the aims and strategies and motivations behind advocacy activities. And therefore, advocacy is in the core of our organization. Because what do we try to achieve through advocacy? Non-discrimination. What do we try to achieve through advocacy? Equality. What do we try to achieve through advocacy? Inclusion. Rights. More facilities. Then these become our motivating factors to empower the visually impaired, and therefore there's no difference between advocacy and an organization. The vision of our organization, in fact, is the vision of our advocacy, or vice versa, perhaps. The vision of advocacy is the vision of our organization. And therefore, advocacy is a core, at the core of forming an organization, somewhere in the thought of advocacy. Now, while that may be there, that is also an unfortunate point that many people, many organizations do not do advocacy. I don't want to get into details right now, but if I ask many organizations, whatever total budget they have in a year, and what amount do they spend on advocacy? Advocacy, pure advocacy. You'll see that the answer would be a rather disappointing one. If advocacy is at the core of our organization, and if that is what we are striving for, is it not necessary that a substantial part of our budget and engagement should be on advocacy? But that unfortunately does not happen. Many organizations do not even spend 10% of their annual budget on advocacy. Why? If that is a core vision, and that brings about inclusion, equality, how we do it is a different issue. Do you have the resources allocated for that? We may have resources for X day or Y day we ask for money. We have resources for many other things. Have we ever asked for a staff salary for advocacy? Equipment? I give you a recent example. We had floated a proposal at AICB. You are our affiliates. So I can talk honestly and frankly. We had floated a proposal that if you want to ask for any support for staff or equipment or training, we will provide you budgets, some limited budget, and we had some money. We are not even been able to provide even more than 30% of our budget for these activities. There was no demand from affiliates. We wrote to our affiliates, but nobody demanded. In that, advocacy was also inbuilt. We had promised that we would provide money for advocacy, but then nobody asked for it. This is our priority. So the issue is not what cases we should do, how we should do, which lawyer we should engage, whatever we should do. Those are again activities. Our strategy is advocacy, which should first reflect in our policy document and then our budget. When we plan our activity for a year, do we really factor in something? We all should know. If we don't know, there's also a drawback, and we should learn. As a part of financial management of organizations, we should learn to make a budget in the beginning of the year. When AICB had no money, even then we used to make a budget. When we have, by God's grace, resources, some resources, the resources are never adequate because the challenge of work is so much, the need for work is so much. But whatever we have, even when we don't know from where the money will come, we make an annual budget, which is presented in the executive and which is passed, and then attempts are made to get resources. It may happen that sometimes you may not get resources. That may happen. Sometimes you may get more resources. But at least the attempt can be there only when you budget it, when you don't even plan it. How will you get resources? So as leaders, it's very important that we should not take our work in the organization casually. Okay, so this will happen, so on that day we'll have this. This will happen on that day, we'll have that. No. You should have a vision for 10 years, for 5 years, for 1 year, for 20 years. Where do you want to see the organization? It's true that you may not stay for that long. Some election may happen, you may be voted out, or somebody else may be voted in. Those things will happen. But whether you are there or somebody else is there doesn't matter, because the organization will continue. And if the organization continues, your vision will also continue. So when you have a vision, you don't have to think of yourself whether I will be there or not there. Think of whether the organization will be there or not there. And if the organization there, then how would you like this organization to be projected? How do you like it to develop? For that, the vision has to be there, which sadly many of our organizations don't have. And therefore, when it comes to specific to advocacy, which is the core, I would go so far as to say that services are very important. But if an organization does not do advocacy, it is a charity-based organization. It has not moved forward. It's only giving charity. And therefore, there are organizations which in the beginning did not do advocacy, and they wanted to do one or two activities. Everybody is coming to advocacy. At one time, we should say advocacy was seen only as something, aggressive. But now, advocacy is seen as a very important strategy. I welcome Vinod Benjamin, who's also joined us. Vinod is a speaker in our next session, but thanks, Vinod, for joining us. Welcome. So, the first thing we should do if we want to include advocacy, which is very important because we don't want to be seen as a charity-based model, and charity has far ceased to be an approach as far as the empowerment of the visually impaired is concerned. But if you want to go beyond charity and if you want to seem to be an empowerment organization, then it's very important that we include advocacy as a part of our planning and strategy every year, short term, long term, whatever term. And if that is to happen, then I would strongly suggest as a strategy, the first thumb rule and have a checklist. Tell me honestly, how many of you do that? 10% of your annual budget, if you cannot put for advocacy, then you're not committed to advocacy. I mean, it's a fundamental core. It's a part of your vision. And you can't think you're 10% to it. And I want to say 10% of your project money, at least 10% of your general donations. Okay, if you get money for, say, computer training, you can't use that for advocacy, though there are ways by which even that money can be used. In the sense, the computer training means also trying to sensitize the private agencies, organizations, corporates. We have Vinod from TCS here. There are many visually impaired persons now working in the private sector. Many of visually impaired who are doing very well in the corporate sector. Well, very important that we sensitize the corporate sector to employ visually impaired persons as computer operators or data entry operators or call centers. That can also be a part of our computer training. So while on one hand, we do computer training, we teach JAWS and Windows and Office and whatnot. On the other hand, we also do advocacy in computer training by just sensitizing. You don't have to take our people. That's not the issue. Sensitize the organizations about the capabilities of the blind as computer operators. That is also a part of, if I may use the word, computer training in a way. So some money can be used for that. If you have 1 lakh rupees for computer, put 10,000 for sensitization, 10%. But at least whatever general donations you get, contributions you get, general fundraising that you do, at least put 10%. How many of us do it? I don't want to embarrass people by asking questions directly, but we all know that not many of us may be doing it. And if you're doing it, I would say come forward and say you're doing it. I'll be very happy. So that's very important if you want to embed advocacy in your organization. First thing is commit to advocacy as a strategy, planning strategy for your organization, which you have already done. The very fact that you formed an organization of the blind means that you have committed yourself to advocacy in your organization. Otherwise, you wouldn't have formed the organization, because charity-based organizations cannot survive if the of the blind is there. The of the blind means the fundamental principle of the blind organization is nothing for us without us. And if that is the fundamental principle of the blind organizations, then advocacy does become integral to it. And it's very strange that we have advocacy integral to it, but we don't make advocacy as a part of annual budget, annual planning. So do that. And once you put this as a part of your annual budget and planning. Put 10% resources. Doesn't matter if you get 10,000 rupees per year, your budget is put 1,000 for it. Some beginning would be made. Can't say we don't have enough money. You have 5 rupees, put 50 paisa for it. I'm giving a thumb rule, 10% minimum. You'll see gradually your advocacy project will grow. AICB advocacy work has grown over so many years now. We have so many cases going in so many parts of the country. We had enough material to bring out a book in 2012. The book is called Combating Discriminations, some path making advocacy initiatives for the visually impaired. It's an AICB initiative in which we have listed 15 of our important advocacy initiatives, mostly PINs, which have brought about a sea change for the visually impaired in the country. And the work has gone much for this. Was 2012. We have many, many more cases after that. Right now, if you look at also, we have 2 cases going on. Now 3 cases going on in Delhi High Court. 1 case in Tamil Nadu High Court and other cases in the pipeline. Advocacy is working. Some cases CCPD. Continuously work is going on every month. But it has not happened overnight. Again, we begin small cases. If I could talk about as a digression for a minute, I'll come back to this point of budgeting. That's very important. And how to go forward and strategies there. But I just want to talk about this, my personal experience, continuing the momentum that Madhu has set up, talking about personal experiences, and then through that illustrating what is required. I had joined again, like Madhu and others. I've been benefited by the continuous guidance of Mr. Kaur and our NATE president, Mr. Mittal. Of course, Mr. Mittal has been a mentor since school days. It was in class 6 that I had my hand first. And he never left that in the last day of his life. The last time I spoke also, before he went to a hospital, he was concerned about some issue that I was going through. And he said he had to resolve that. So he has always been a teacher, a mentor. But as far as Mr. Kaur is concerned, of course, I know him from childhood. But we used to see him work and we've seen him grow. But it was in 1995 that both NAB Delhi and AICB contacted me to be part of their committees. And I began in both organizations as a committee member. I became the joint secretary of NAB Delhi in 98. And then soon after that, in 2000, executive member of AICB. But before that, when I was more active involved with AICB, in 1999, when the office of the chief commissioner had started functioning, our first advocacy initiative was in 1997 when we wanted to implement the reservation for visually impaired persons in educational institutions, because many of them are autonomous. We wanted to have clear directions from UGC that they should be implemented so that all universities create 1% reservation in vacancies for the visually impaired. And we thought it would be very easy because what is there? I mean, the act is there now. I was in the education committee of AICB at that time, and we thought it was going to be very easy. We will write and this will happen. So we wrote to UGC. And after a few letters here and there, lo and behold, in October 1997, we get a letter from a very high official, really high official of UGC, saying that the PWD Act did not apply on UGC and the university. We have that letter. UGC writing that the Act does not apply on us, on UGC and university. It is for the government. This is the UGC sitting 2 kilometers maybe away from the Parliament House in which the Act was passed, saying that the Act does not apply on UGC, did not apply on UGC. We were appalled. And very senior, I can't tell you a designation, but a very, very senior officer, very competent authority, as we call it technically, very senior, high officer. And we had that letter on record, And so what did we do? We had no choice. We went to the Supreme Court of India along with Nanda Bhandari Trust, and we filed a case. And on 19 March 2002, there was an order by which not only 1% reservation for the visually impaired was achieved in educational institutions in all the universities, a Supreme Court order. Also, we got the relaxation in net 5%, which we also argued for. So this relaxation in net we have, 5% relaxation in eligibility to appear in net is because of the AICB case, which many people don't even know. It's such an old case, and that time, the mediums and means were not there to publicize whatever publicity we did. I was spreading awareness. But the point is, it was that one case that set us going. And that time we didn't know that advocacy would become this has become today for AICB. It's a very central concern, and we do spend substantial amount of money on advocacy. It's not that we get work free of cost. No, we pay our lawyers. We pay decently to our lawyers. We pay decently to our consultants. Because to us is important, as important as running any other project. And that should be the attitude of every organization. Coming further then, in 1999, there was a case. The office of CCPD opened. At that time, one person who was a clerk in Punjab National Bank was fighting to, he had asked for permission to appear for the exam officer, and he was not allowed. And he went to CAT, but there was no judgment. In which, meanwhile, two other persons from the same bank were denied promotion. They were denied the opportunity to even appear in the exam. I'm not saying they were denied promotion, that's later stage. They were denied the opportunity to appear even in the examination. And I said, we will go to CCPD this time. We will not go to CAT or where the thing get lingered. And, and no judgment comes. So there was no precedence, there were no officers. The hardly one or two cases were there in banks where visually impaired person had about officers or general terms. But this whole idea of there's hundreds of bank officers that we see who are visually impaired was not the case. Hardly anyone was there, and banks were not permitting visually impaired persons to act as officers. So we went to CCPD. We filed the case. It was the third ever case in the history of CCPD. You can check the number of the case, 3/99. Third ever case in the history of CCPD that was argued. And I was the person arguing that case. On the other side, but they had senior lawyers, they had the deputy general manager, the entire team. I was single-handed from the AICB. And I was told by a senior official of CCPD not to come for the case. I was told, don't come and argue. You will lose this case. There's nothing in it. You'll spoil your career. I said, we'll see. Doesn't matter. So I still went. There was a 2-hour argument, long argument with their lawyers. I was arguing for myself. And after 3 hours of it was, we began at 1, began at 11, ended at 1, and around 4 o'clock I got a call from CCPD officer, from same officer, senior officer, and that person said, bank is saying that they agree to everything you're saying. They agree to all. They give promotion. Just one request they are making: please don't publicize this in the newspapers, otherwise the image will get spoiled. They were so scared after that hearing. They conceded. There was no need for order. Order was given. But even before that, the bank conceded. They're done wrong. But they just said, and they were afraid that they will get a bad name in the country. And their corporate reputation will suffer in case this case was highlighted. So this is the extent of power of advocacy. A case which was a non-issue, which even CAT was not able to resolve in another case, we were able to get resolved without any legal help. I was the one arguing. This where Muthu said, I argued, yeah, this is where the confidence came. Of course, I come from a family of lawyers and judges. My uncle was in Punjab and Haryana High Court. One of my cousins is a session judge in Haryana. My nephew is a lawyer, famous lawyer. My other cousin is also a very famous lawyer. But I come from that family. But that apart, my own interest in arguing advocacy began with that one case, which I was told I would lose. But we won successfully. And today you see hundreds of visually impaired persons appearing in promotions, are working as officers. And it is because that case of Punjab National Bank of 3/99, anybody can verify the order. This is a fact on record. The point I'm trying to make is, you have to begin small, you have to be bold in advocacy. You have to be very bold in advocacy. If you get overpowered by senior lawyer being there, issue being weak, government department, many of the state commissioners are scared. I know 2 examples where state commissioners do not even want to take up issues when we are representing to them. They say, oh, this is a problem. So in one case, I told my affiliate, concerned affiliate, the state, please file a complaint against the commissioner in the government. Please file a complaint. Because you can't have commissioners who are scared of taking action. That's not possible. You have to be bold, you have to be brave, you have to be convinced of what the rightness, what you're doing. It doesn't matter whether others are convinced or not. That is immaterial. If you are convinced and you know what you're doing is right, right, not from your emotion. Many people are very emotional in advocacy. You cannot be emotional. You have to be very logical and methodical. So coming back to methodology, as I said, two things I told you: make a part of your strategy and plan. And we're going to ask you on this. I told you in the morning only that we will make a plan of action, and we're going to follow up. Muthu is not going to leave you, and I'm not going to leave you alone. We'll all help you. We'll work together. We'll work together, ensure that your ideas and your plans are executed. We'll see what we can do. We are really serious this time. And there's always, but this time, our funding agency also has a mandate that we want to bring visible change, but that is even the funding agency did not want it. We want to ensure now onwards, as we had done earlier also, but we want to enhance that commitment, that whatever affiliates want to do, we help them, support them, maybe not by money, but by strategies, by whatever. And we should see that ideas are implemented. It's very easy to have ideas, there's no problem. There's a mythical character called, or folklore character, Sheikh Chindi in Hindi folk literature. And Sheikh Chindi is known for imagining various stories, imagining various plans, big things. And he doesn't do anything, he keeps lying around and keep imagining those plans. It's very easy to plan and imagine things. It's very difficult to implement even one of those plans. Not one can be implemented. So it's important that we support our affiliates, because as I keep saying, I said in the morning that you are our helper. So after strategizing and budgeting, what should you do? Identify the need. Which are the issues which are important? You need to have advocacy issues. One example is CSJB. They are very seized on the fact that reservation is not being implemented in state and elite colleges in the university. I understand there's another case also going on with regard to the government universities in Tamil Nadu, and we hope to. Why can't we have similar cases in Kerala? Why can't we have similar cases in Hyderabad? We should do that. We have lawyers from both the states, both the states. Please, our affiliates take up similar cases, replicate whatever case are happening. One case in your case, that will be also. That's how the advocacy will spread across the country. Because Tamil Nadu Madras High Court orders will apply on Madras, but for your state, again, you have to go to High Court. Why wait for that High Court order to come? You also can work simultaneously. We are willing to help. Please do that. So strategize the need. What is the need of your stakeholder? What are the issues in your states on advocacy? Identify them, plan them, prioritize them. Which are the important issues in terms of priority? And once you've done that, next is to then find resources. Resources could be money. If you're budgeted an amount which you don't have, look for resources. And it's not difficult to find support for advocacy. You go to a lawyer, senior lawyer, say, we want to do advocacy, we want to keep a staff. Sometimes you may not expect government to support advocacy. No, that may not happen because it is against the government. I often say in a serious way, but jokingly, but in a serious way, that the biggest defaulter of the RPD, yeah, Srinivas, I see your hand, we'll come to you. Yeah, so I always say that the biggest defaulter of the RPD Act is the government of India itself, which has passed the act, and the state governments. Because why? Because the act is applicable on the government bodies primarily, and the state governments. And you see, 99% cases, 98% cases would be against the government bodies and the state governments in the courts on RPD Act. Why should there be need for that? You have passed your own act. Central government has passed the act. State governments have adopted it. Now implement it. The biggest challenge in implementation is for the government. They don't implement what they have passed. That is the irony of life. And therefore, you can't expect governments to support advocacy. You have to raise individual resources. And I would say, even if you're able to do one, fine. You can't, sometimes cases are not completed. We filed a case against Indian Railways when they advertised for 8,000 vacancies, and not a single vacancy was reserved for visually impaired in 2005. For PWD, forget about visually impaired. That was 2005. And as a result of that case, 4,154, 4,254. I'm giving an exact number of vacancies which were created for PWD. 4,254. Not a small number by any chance. But it took us 7 years to fight that case in Delhi High Court. 7 years. In between, we had to go to Supreme Court a couple of times. The interim orders were there and all that. So even if you can find one impact case in a year in your state, you'll see after 10 years, there will be sea change in the condition of the visually impaired in your state. Sea change, one case, which may not cost 50, 60,000 rupees. And AICB is willing to help. If you are willing to help some part, we are willing to help financially also such cases. We help in terms of consider. You have the advantage of resources being available to you. But identify resources at your own level. Good lawyers. We need good lawyers. We need some money. We need the right people to draft. Involve capable visually impaired persons who can help in advocacy in your states, in your organization. We have Swati and we have another friend of ours from Canada, from Hyderabad, who are now graduates. Involve such people. I'm sure they're the right people to help because they have done law. I too haven't even done law. And my name comes in so many judgments, not just on advocacy for PWD or vision. I have also now looking after some mainstream advocacy work in Delhi University. Mainstream legal work, some certain files sometimes I need to look into. So legal degrees are not important. Skills are important. If you have the skills, degrees don't matter. But if you have people with degrees, Swati is there, our friend. Sorry, I've forgotten your name.
And George could be there.
George, yes. George is there. So there you have the people who are interested. Please, from today, make a beginning that you will help your respective organizations in advocacy and be in touch with the AICB. We have requested every organization to have one nodal person on advocacy. We have made this request in our executive. How many of you have done that? And why have we not done it then? I mean, as president, it's a request. Kindly do that at the earliest. One person on advocacy who can be in touch with us, who can develop your advocacy plan. But believe me, if I have much more to say, I can conduct a 2-day workshop on advocacy. There's no problem with that. But there's no time. But to end, I would like to just say, I have very two strict ladies as monitors who are looking at watch, and Aishwarya and Muthu. So I will not disappoint them. I will conclude just by saying that if you really want to ensure the existence, I'm using very strong terminology, even existence and relevance of your organization, after a few years, you have no choice but to do advocacy because services will not take you very far. These are charity-based, and ultimately, ideally speaking, the services should be offered by the government. It's their job. Our role as self-help organizations of the visually impaired is to promote more and more advocacy, more and more implementation of rights. So please ensure to include advocacy and do advocacy. Otherwise, there may be a serious challenge to the relevance of your organizations even after a few years. This is a sincere advice based on actual trends which are visible in the area of rights and empowerment these days. Thank you very much. Muthu, you conduct the question section. We already have 2 hands raised.
Thank you, sir. A very important point you made is that every organization should have at least 10% of their budget for advocacy. That is a very important point. So thank you, sir. I'll not take much time because people will be more keen in asking questions. So we will invite the questions now. I should have kindly unmute.
First we have Srinivas, then we have Nagraj. These 2 hands I have seen. Then after we'll go to others.
First we'll have it from Srinivas.
Sir. Sir, in Telangana state, the reservation of 6th roster, which is meant for the women with visual impairment, not yet resolved, sir. Actually, here the authorities are considering 4% reservation for persons with disabilities as a single and reserving the first vacancy, which roster is meant for the women in our state, that is giving to women with visual impairment, sir. According to the government orders, the 6th, 31st, 56th and 82 posts are reserved for the physically challenged, 1% to each, VH 6th, 31st for hearing impaired, 56 for locomotor disabilities, and 82 for multiple disabilities according to the RPWD Act. However, the 6th, which is the first roster point reserved for the physically handicapped or disabled, whatever it may be, this is giving to women with such a specific category, but they are not converting that post into general, and they are saying that the 106th, 206th, and 306th will be for the visually challenged general. You may the male category can get jobs in those roster posts, or not in the sixth post. They are saying like that. So I several times argued with the authorities concerned, but they are not accepting my appeal. My contention is that the authorities has not to be considered the 4% reservation for persons with disability as a single category, and they have to treat. There are four subcategories, and each subcategory has only 1% reservation. How they could divide the
I got
1%
the point.
reservation?
Yeah, I got the point. Next question, Muthu.
Next, Nagarajan can ask a question.
Thank you for the sharing with the advocacy related discussion. It is really a wonderful session, and I'm happy to share that in Tamil Nadu state, CSJB is still existing on the part of advocacy. Of course, you referred the same, and even recently also in Ethiraj College that for the persons with women disability, they didn't give any notification regarding that. So with the help of AICB, even that also we have succeeded. Now, it is a kind of an observation that I want to have a small question there. So we have a zero fast track for orthopedical, I think so, right? So can't we use that? Or can't we are eligible not? We are not eligible on that.
Yes. So I tell you, I'd answer both. Number one, to Mr. Srinivas' question. Srinivas, we have discussed this matter on phone earlier. Also, I had requested you then to send the relevant documents to us and write to us to take up the case. We are very happy to support you. Talking will not help. One thing we should remember in advocacy, talking is the first point. But if it doesn't work, then writing is the next point. If talking doesn't work, then writing. We discuss first, but don't stop at that. We have discussed things don't work. They may not work, but then we start writing. We represent, then we do legal notice, then we do court cases. We don't go to court right in the beginning. That's also an error. Just the court straight away. So that should not happen. We should first send a representation, then a legal notice, where we point out, why do you want certain thing to do? What are the legal provisions? And then after court, only then the court would listen to you. So please do write. It's an important issue. I have told you earlier also, sir. Please do write to us. Send me the documents. Get the case summary. Identify a good lawyer. We'll be willing to help you take up this case in Telangana and support you also with the revenue of the lawyer if it's reasonable. But we need to have a good lawyer, not just any lawyer who knows disability. We'll give the briefing to the lawyer also. We'll do all that. But the basic documentation and representation you need to provide to us, asking us to handle the case. We will take up that matter. It's a serious issue. The only way is now to take legal action, as I told you earlier also when we had talked about this on the phone. But I have not heard from you. Kindly write, send the documents and representation requesting us.
Shall I send all the government orders from the beginning, or shall I send the order which was issued after enactment of the RPW Act?
No, send the orders which are relevant. They may be from any time. No problem. Okay. So please do that. So Nagarajan, congratulations first on your protest. Ethiraj College, yes, we had served a legal notice. Muthu was very active in that. And we are happy that CSJB is doing a lot of advocacy. Please continue that, because believe me, that's the only way to reach the maximum number. One case, one college, it may be 30 vacancies, but it will impact many other colleges. So that's the surest ways to reach the maximum number of people. Yeah. Any other? Ishwarya, no? Hands?
So we have.
Yes.
Sir, I have actually, I have one question and one happy news to share with you. The news is that in Kerala, the government of Kerala had issued an order earlier that 4% reservation should be given to the disabled in government aided institutions, schools and colleges.
Yes.
And the management, at first the management challenged it in High Court single bench. Kerala Federation of the Blind along with other organizations fought it, and we got the upper hand that the court rejected the petition. Then the management association went to the division bench of the High Court. There also we fought and the court rejected the petition. Quite 2-3 weeks back, the government has issued a very clear-cut order that in the higher education sector, any appointment that should be conducted in from then onward should be in consideration with the existing reservation of 4% with for the disabled only. There should be clear-cut protocols in the appointment. That is the happy news.
Very
I
good.
think
Congratulations.
so
Congratulations.
we've
Yes,
been.
yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. And the question is, when vacancies are reserved in the universities now, certain universities consider like they give the first roster post to the visually impaired, that is the in the assistant professor category, then to the hearing impaired in the associate professor category, and then to the other group in the professor category. That is how certain universities are reserving the post. Some
Yeah.
other universities are giving reservation in the assistant professor, associate professor. Each category they are giving reservation to the different categories. So my
Yes.
question is there any clear-cut logic that
No,
if
there's no
suppose
logic. No, there's a problem. I know. We at Delhi University are giving first to visually impaired, then to orthopedic, then to hearing. And
Okay.
we have a justification for that. But as such, the DOPT says that you can give any point to any vacancy. The head of the institution can decide. But we can argue, if you want to go to court, then we can
Yes.
argue, but that will also bring a counter argument from other disabilities. We can argue there are 2 or 3 points. One is that in the list of identified jobs, the visually impaired is first mentioned. 2 is in section 34, the visually impaired category is first mentioned. 3 is in the DOPT order also for 2018, the visually impaired are first mentioned, therefore the first should go to them. Also, we can argue that the less number of vacancies are identified for them than for others, and therefore they need to give them prior opportunities. We can argue that learning challenges are more for them. All these grounds are there.
Sir, excuse me, sir, that is not the issue. Here the priority is always given to the visually impaired. Here the issue is whether the reservation roster should be there separately for assistant, associate, or professor category, or
okay. That's the issue. Okay, yeah, yes, I got the point, Habib.
Yes.
Now in Delhi University, we do. Sorry to rush you, but since I want to count number of questions, I know these questions have been asked to me a number of times also earlier by other people, because I'm the nodal officer. So many universities also
no issues, sir. No issues.
Yes, and many universities also contact me in the UGC contact me sometimes to find out these things. This is a part of my mainstream work. They are all in touch with me. So I tell you, we maintain a Delhi University separately, but there is also a DOPT order that that reservation rosters are made group wise. Group means these are all group A services. But then the point is, we are saying group wise, yes, but it also says taking into vacancy in the cadre stand. Associate professor is a different cadre than an assistant professor. So there are gray areas. But even if they are maintained together, at least reservation is maintained, good thing. But we can request, we can't go to court perhaps on this, but we can, or we can try to go to court also saying that these are different cadres and they should be separated, different pay grades are there, different service conditions, different jobs are there, different posts are there. So they can't be put together. But then there is a gray area because DOPT order says has to be group wise. So that is the problem. Yeah, but we can work on that. But yeah, the other part that you talked about, aided college, is very good indeed. And I would say share that order with our friends in CSJB and Muthu, so we can use this in our Chennai case also.
It was shared, sir. It was shared.
I'll share the recent order, the recent last order.
CSJB has cited that order with the higher education secretary.
Nagaran, just keep it at Prabhakar and continue to pressurize him, because he is very slow. We have paid the money for that, but he keep pressurizing him. Okay, any other question?
We have
actually we have reservations in various categories now, like education and employment, etc. So why can't we get in political reservations, sir? Because SC category and ST category and other backward castes are getting reservations in politics. So why don't we participate in politics? That is my question and opinion, sir.
This requires a constitutional amendment, and towards with some demands have been there. We should work towards that. but you also realize that constitution amendment is not very easy. Even the reservation for PWBD is not as per constitution. It's not by way of constitution amendment. It's by way of a separate bill. But we should move towards it. But it's going to be a long struggle. We should all come together and work together on this. That's very important. But we should definitely fight for it. I fully agree with you. More work needs to be done on this area. Yes. Yes.
But
Swati.
comparing other categories and other communities, sir, comparing other communities and categories, so we are.
Swamina, I lost you. Yeah.
I think his network has.
Hello.
We go to Swati.
We'll
Hello.
go to Swati, then we'll come back.
Hello.
Yes, Swati.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes,
Hello. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, very much.
Okay, sir. Thanks for giving a wonderful session, sir. I have one question. Sir, in legal stream, sir, after completing the law course, we have to write the AIB exams. Actually, the AIB exams are the open book exams, but they are not allowing us to take our e-content like that. So my question is, how can we fight for that? Since it's a pan-India organization, we have to fight in Supreme Court.
No, this is it. No, we don't have to fight to begin with. Which is the organization, Swati? AIB?
So actually, all India bar exams. The Bar Council of India conducts these exams.
They don't. Okay, please do write to us. Give me the details. We will send a representation to them. We will take a legal notice, and then of course needs we go to Supreme Court also. No problem with that.
So I think many write before many persons intimate this to Bar Council of India, but they are not properly responding, sir. Actually, when I write the exam, I asked some doubt regarding scribe also, but they didn't reply on time.
This is a government body or a private body?
So they are the regulators, sir. Bar Council of India.
Oh, regulator. So please do write. No, like IBPS, yes. So please do write to us, and we will write to them. We'll send them a legal notice first, and we'll go to Supreme Court. Very good case to go to Supreme Court. Very good case.
Yes, sir.
So,
and please, we also have to fight for the CLAT also, sir.
That also, we've been in touch with Muthu for it up. Sure, documents come to us, and we will do that. Please be in touch with Muthu Sindhi, and she'll get the documents. So you send her supplement to us, to her also, and she'll forward to us and to AICB. You can send to her or to AICB. We're a copy to both of us. But we will take up this issue on a priority, on urgent basis. We will do this. Copy. Very urgent basis. When is the next exam?
When is the exam, Swati?
Swati, when is the exam?
When is the exam, Swati?
In IFLU, the IFLU has issued a notification asking applications from the eligible candidates for the post of assistant professor or professor, I think. So in the notification, they have said that only the visually impaired who belongs to SC category has to apply. So in this connection, I would like to know the reservation in central government based on the community or disability.
No. 2017 rules make it very clear. They have a separate class. So this is challengeable. Challenge in High Court. We send a legal notice to them and then we challenge. Please send us a document.
Mr. Rajshekhar has already spoke to you, sir, on this issue.
No, I don't seem to have heard from him. But even if he has, I missed it. So please do ask him to send again.
Kindly write to AICB so that we can take up.
And copy to Muthu also along with that. So because we are working together on it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Swati.
Because writing will help us to identify the issue, understand the issue.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you asked about the exam, sir. At the time, I was not able to mute. So these exams, Bar Council of India conduct these exams twice a year, sir.
Where is the
one
next
in
exam?
March and another one in September, sir. Sir, actually, they postponed this exam. No, sir, they postponed the exam. So last September exams, they conducted in January, sir. If I get the notification, I will surely share it
but before that also, send us the document along with copies of your representation and their responses. And we will move to Supreme Court on this. Please do that.
Okay, sir.
Mathu close.
Yes, sir.
Others can keep in touch with us. When we have further session, we can keep talking about it. We can have a slightly open session also if needs be at 3:30 if the time permits. Muthu, we will join at 2 sharp. By 2, everybody should join.
It's
Because
been
2 sharp we'll start. Yeah. So we won't cut on your lunch time. Muthu, close the session with that. 2 o'clock.
We will exactly meet by 2 o'clock. It's 1:03. So
thank both the speakers, no, Muthu. Thank both the
Yeah, yeah.
speakers.
Yeah, and I thank both the speakers for conducting the brainstorming session and the question answer session. So we also thank all the participants for being very active, and we expect and we request the same cooperation and participation in the afternoon session also. Thank you all. We'll rejoin at 2 o'clock.